All right, we back. We're going to talk about ovulation, um, egg development, ovulation, and the menstrual cycle in this one. And so we're going to zoom way in on the ovary here and draw this bad boy real big. Um, and this is going on. You guys looked at these slides, actually. This is happening with multiple eggs all in the ovary. But to start, we're just going to draw one of them, one in the cycle. But this is happening all the time. And this is happening to one of them a month, but you have like hundreds of them in there, in each ovary. Okay, so we got essentially the follicle or the egg cell, and it's surrounded by these granulosa cells, like a thin little kind of ring. Let me put those in the back there, like so. And this is made out of multiple cells here. Okay, so we got our little egg. This will be like our little egg. And then the gray part is the granulosa cells. And these all kind of work they do a lot of different stuff, but we're trying to develop the egg here for fertilization so that it can be released and fertilized. The first thing that kind of happens is these granulosa cells go through a bunch of division. The granulosa cells divide. All right. Granulosa cells divide. So this whole thing kind of just gets bigger. I'm just going to copy this. And this region just gets bigger. And I'm just going to cheat. These would be like the nuclei of the cells. I'm not going to draw them all in though. All right. Nice and beautiful. This continues to occur, so we get more division. More division. And I'm sure you remember some of this. Copy this bad boy. And we get like a whole nother layer of cells all around this thing. Like that. Maybe drew it a little big for this first one. Something like that. And in the center, it starts to fill with fluid here. And this would all be also cellular material here. Okay, that's fine. Those would be all cells here. Looks pretty cool. Okay, and this fluid, no, that's not what I wanted. It's follicular, so this is the follicle. This whole thing is the follicle. And this is the follicular fluid. And it is primarily estrogen. It's got a lot of goodies in it, but estrogen is the one that I care that you know about, which is a hormone. It's like the female sex hormone. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. Estrogen. And then development continues. Copy this part here again. And all of this is kind of releasing these hormones like estrogen, as well as kind of feeding this egg. Okay. And right here we actually go through our like maturation process. This is actually where like for the first round of meiosis occurs. I don't necessarily care that you know that though. Didn't like the way that was looking. Okay, we'll stick with that. So we get it even bigger. Cavity for this follicular fluid. I can't remember the name of that cavity. Antrum. That's what it is. Okay. Even bigger antrum full of even more fluid. Okay, so this is still all cells around here. Okay, beautiful. All right, don't really like the way that looks with those huge cells, but whatever. I don't care. All right, so the antrum enlarges, and polar bodies are ejected. So if you actually look now in this egg, I don't talk about what those are, but these would be the polar bodies. What color do I want to do them in? I'll do them in this color, and I'll do them like that. So we got the polar body. This is the first round of meiosis. Remember in sperm? Let me go back actually. I think this is cool. And this will make sense when we get to meiosis. So we had 2 rounds of meiosis. So in sperm, we keep both of the haploid gametes here to make 4 gametes total. But when we're making an egg, we get rid of all the polar bodies in humans. We get rid of, let's say, this one, this one, this, and this one, and we just keep this one. And so we've gone through this first round of meiosis. You actually go through the second round of meiosis when the sperm fertilizes the egg. It's pretty weird. It's amazing any of us are here. Oh, let's get real. Okay, now what happens is we have actually fusion of the follicle with the ovary in this area of the fallopian tube. Like so. Okay, so this part is going to fuse here. Like this. And it's going to release that oocyte or that egg. That's what this is. So this is now going to be released out here. And all of this follicular fluid is going to be released as well. Okay, beautiful. And this process here of your oocyte or egg being released, that's referred to as ovulation. This is ovulation. Oocyte / egg is released. It's fully developed and now it is released into the fallopian tube. Very important to know. What is that? What is ovulation? Okay, now what happens is over time, this thing here sticks around. The outside of this follicle sticks around. It doesn't just go away. It's not garbage. It's not trash. Get rid of some of this. It's pretty wild how this works. Oops. So it looks something like that. It starts to kind of shrivel up. And then eventually it detaches and pulls away from the outside of the ovary. Like this. All right. And this releases progesterone. Releases progesterone, which is another hormone, and we'll talk about what those do. Okay, releases progesterone. And it will shrivel up into nothingness if fertilization does not occur. Okay, so if fertilization occurs, it'll stick around. And we'll talk about why that is. This thing is called the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum. All right, so this is your basic ovulation cycle that's happening in the ovary. This is what's going on in the ovary. All right. All right, now this bad boy will migrate a little bit. There's little cilia that beat actually all along here that help move the egg. So there's tiny little cilia. Tiny little cilia beat to move the oocyte or the egg. Okay. Boom. All right, and now let's say we got ourselves, well, a little fun time. Let's say we got one of these in here. Doing some business. It's not the girthiest, but, you know, we're having a good time. All right. And this boy releases, you know, an ejaculation. And contained within that ejaculation are going to be little sperms. And they're going to go right up in here. Remember that there's a lot, I don't even know how many, it depends on how long it's been, the fluid content, you know, several milliliters of semen to many milliliters of semen. And these little sperm, it's going to contain things like sperm, which have these tails, which are going to swim. And it's also got things like prostaglandins, which are going to cause this area, the cervix, this uterus to contract to suck up more of that semen to increase the chances of one of these 400 million sperms, let's say 150 million, 200 million, depends on, you know, how long it's been since the last ejaculation, sperms to kind of migrate all the way up here. So let's just, I don't know, let's draw a couple. Just copy a couple of these bad boys. Not to scale, obviously. So they would migrate all the way up. Swim all the way up here. And then they actually fertilize up here in the fallopian tube. Fertilization occurs. Okay, so we got this now fertilized. We would have now the acrosome activating this whole thing here, right? Acrosome would activate and the DNA would now, from the sperm would enter into the egg or the oocyte. And now we would have a zygote or an embryo that would start to develop. Okay. Okay, so now fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube. Fertilization usually occurs in the fallopian tube or the oviduct. Okay. Then what happens is this egg continues through the ciliary movement, cilium beating, moves down here, and will implant onto the side. This embryo will implant to the side of the uterus here. And I'm going to draw, I'll take this whole thing, bring them over here, like so, and get rid of that tail, and we'll fuse that in there like that. Boom. Okay. Then this guy implants, so it's kind of actually sucked in underneath a little tissue layer, and then the embryo starts to develop here. The placenta will form, which is like vasculature that then hooks up to the umbilical cord. It doesn't actually directly connect, but is next to the umbilical cord to the baby. Skipping a lot of steps there. This would start to divide, so it would have been dividing this whole time, actually, as it migrates. It starts to already develop, and then it fuses in here, and this is where it's going to finish its development. Okay, it's called the endometrial lining. It's very nourishing, delicious tissue. Okay, and so let's talk about that. Let's talk about, then this would be embryo migrates and implants in uterus for further development. It's pretty weird how that works. If you ask me, that's kind of weird. Like it gets fertilized up here, and then it migrates, and then it implants, and then this is where then the baby would develop, is down here in the uterus. Okay, goes through all this weird cycle stuff. All right, let's just further expand this little story of ovulation. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of recopy these. I'm just going to kind of copy this. And we're going to make a little graph. Okay. You guys can draw these things much faster than I can. We don't need any of these details. I just want the parts, essentially. Okay, get rid of this. Okay. Keep that, keep that estrogen there. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of just put these in order here. Left to right. I don't actually need this one. Get rid of that one. And we want this guy, which, if you remember, it's making estrogen. And then we got the larger follicle. And then we've got ovulation. And then we've got these two. Corpus luteum, both of which are releasing progesterone. Okay. All right, now just put them in order like this. Beautiful. I'm going to make these a little bigger so they make sense. Okay. All right, beautiful. So that's kind of the ovulation cycle right there, just laid out in front of us. All right. All right, well, what is actually controlling this? What is controlling this function of ovulation? It's a couple of hormones that are actually released from the brain. So this is an ovary-brain cycle interaction. Your menstrual cycle, if you have one, is an ovary. It's controlled by your ovaries and also by your brain. All right, so let's go up here to the brain first to start. And if you remember from the nervous system, we got our brain stem, we got a part that kind of comes down like this. We got our brain, and we got our thing like our cerebellum in the back, something like that, very simply. Now right here we've got a pituitary gland, kind of like right there. I'll make it a little bigger. We got our pituitary, right? This is like our hormone releasing sac in our brain, the pituitary. Okay, well, right at ovulation, you get a spike in 2 hormones. So like right, and men have these hormones too. It's actually a little tighter of a release. Like that. And then we got another hormone. Starts to get released earlier, actually. Like so. Okay. This is LH, or luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone. And which stimulates ovulation, as well as follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone, which also stimulates ovulation. Follicle, how do you spell that? Follicle stimulating hormone. I don't know how to spell follicle. 2 L's. Okay. All right, so both of those are released by the pituitary, stimulates ovulation. All right, it's pretty cool. All right. All right, let's add in another couple hormones. Now, we've already talked about these, but let's talk about them in context with their concentration. So we've got the ovary now. Talking about the ovary. Ovary. Need a little T, sorry. All right, and we've got our estrogen being kind of contained, but also released by this developing follicle. All right, so as this cycle is continuing, what's happening is estrogen is rising through this, and then right before ovulation, estrogen dips. And then it actually goes back up, but not to the same height. And then it actually dips again. Okay, so this is estrogen. And then we have progesterone, which, if you remember, is released by this corpus luteum. So progesterone is going to start as ovulation occurs, progesterone is going to rise. And then it's going to fall off, let's say, if pregnancy does not occur. So this is progesterone. Right? So estrogen is made here, progesterone is made here. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All right. Now let's talk about what's happening. So that's what's happening in the brain, what's happening with the oocyte, what's happening with the hormone levels in the ovary. Now let's talk about what's happening with the endometrium. So if we're talking about the uterus, I'll just draw a simple uterus here. It's like a T. And it's kind of got, yeah, these layers here. All right, perfect. All right, simple uterus. Well, if we look here at this, the endometrial lining. We look at the thickness of the endometrium over time. That's what we're going to look at. So if we were to just take a small little section there and look at that thickness of the endometrium over time, this is what it would look like. And I need to make all that a little smaller there. Okay, so day 1. All right, so we've got our menstrual, or our endometrium. It's kind of losing its thickness during menses. And then as estrogen is rising, let's say if pregnancy doesn't occur. So it starts up higher, we lose it, and then as estrogen rises, our endometrium layer builds. And then as progesterone is released, it continues to build. And then as progesterone is lost, it starts to decrease, like so. Okay, and this is very vascular. So we got veins, and arteries. Okay, it's like a very nourishing tissue to catch the oocyte, to catch the embryo, sorry, not the oocyte, the embryo, to bring it in, to build the placenta, to feed it. And we slough this off every 28 days. All right, so let's go through this cycle here. This is kind of the sloughing phase, or menses. So this would be like day 1 to 5 is the menstrual phase. Menstrual phase. Okay, so this is your period essentially. Menses, cramping and all that from prostaglandins. A lot of fun. Everyone loves it. Okay, and then days 5 to 14, kind of as ovulation is occurring. This is your proliferative phase. This is when you're building your endometrium up. Proliferative phase. I guess I should put these are blood vessels. Blood vessels. So then from 14 to 28, this is your secretory phase, when hormones are being secreted. Okay. And this will stay this way if implantation occurs. So if during ovulation, so let's say implantation never occurs, we never have fertilization occur, this will happen, right? Just the way it is. But let's say we have implantation occur, like that, then this will stay, this corpus luteum will stay. It'll keep releasing progesterone to maintain this endometrium, and the placenta will develop. Okay? But if it doesn't, if implantation never occurs, if this never occurs, right there, the corpus luteum will shrivel up if fertilization does not occur. Exactly how that communicates there, I'm not quite sure. I don't quite know. There's probably a hormone release that helps in that communication. I actually don't know. But when implantation occurs, the endometrium will be maintained because the corpus luteum keeps releasing progesterone to maintain it. But this didn't happen. Okay? All right, a couple key things here. I think that's all I'm going to talk, because I'm going to talk about contraception in the next one, and we'll talk about that in the next one. So I think that's all I want to talk about. Yeah, I keep thinking about contraception methods and all that, so I just want to, I'll save that for the next one. Yeah, that's the ovulation and menstrual cycle. Oh, I guess this. Ovulation occurs at about 14 days, about midway through your menstrual cycle. So, and another little thing, this does kind of have to do with birth control, but it's okay. Sperm can survive about 5 days in the vagina, or in the uterus. About 5 days. So 5 days before or after the oocyte is released, 5 days before, really, those sperm can still be alive in there. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. So around the 14-day mark is when ovulation occurs. Like you can't, at day 5, you won't be able to be pregnant. If you're trying to conceive a child, you want to have sex around the time of ovulation, which is, after your period ends, you could start having sex 4 to 5 days after that on a daily basis, 3 to 4 times a day. Really make sure it happens. Yeah, I think that's all I want to talk about with this. I think it's really fascinating. Men also have these same hormones. We also have testosterone in there, but like in men, like these stimulate testosterone production as well as sperm production, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm also going to talk about breast anatomy in the next one. I forgot to talk about that one. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.